welcome to this month's Taxi Passenger Profile. I'm interviewing Paul Croteau from Texas, San Antonio, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I want to read you his most recent bio, and then we're going to get into something he posted on the Taxi Forum all the way back in 2016. As I was working on my questions for today's interview, I found this and went, why am I writing questions? He was so incredibly succinct 7 years ago that I'm going to use these as the basis for the interview today. And we're going to do a little like, okay, so that's what you thought then. How's it going now kind of stuff. So, Paulie, welcome. Oh, he's, by the way, Paul Croteau in his musical life is known as Yo Paulie.
That's right.
So, welcome. All right. His bio reads, I'm a Texas based multi instrumentalist that has been involved in music in one way or another for about 40 years. Pretty good for a 37-year-old. I'm also a Boomerang Taxi member. I originally joined in 2015 and learned a ton. The taxi community helped me become the producer I am today, and I'm back to help pay it forward. I'm a husband, father of two kids, and an IT professional by day. Writing music is a full-time second job for me, and now I have over 1,000 tracks spread across 30 different libraries, and my music was used in about 30 different shows so far in 2021 that I'm aware of. I listen to and play all styles of music and work hard to remain true to the idiom of the moment with a commitment to stylistic accuracy. My recent top placement genres have been trap, dramedy, tension underscore, and classic jazz, saxophone or piano combos. And I do want to add to that Paulie is like a first chair saxophonist. He's not just a guy that took it in band. He's the guy that takes it seriously and can play like a mother.
Yeah,
But
thank
this
you.
doesn't mention something. You just recently, and I'm doing this from memory, and at my age, that isn't always reliable. But
Okay.
didn't you just have a placement in a major motion picture like a month ago?
I did, and actually two. So the first one I got, and both of these are through libraries I met specifically due to Taxi. The first placement was in the Will Ferrell, Ryan Reynolds Christmas movie on Apple TV called Spirited. A very interesting take on the Christmas story, and it was a classical string quartet, slightly jazz influenced. It was to a brief from 2 years ago to a Taxi library for something completely different, but they came back and snagged it, and I found out last fall that it was selected for the movie, and then I was waiting for the movie to come out, and I finally found it. I don't. It probably goes for a minute 19. There's an upfront fee. I have no idea what the royalties look like on that, but yeah, I was totally stoked. And then the bonus was that I got credit in the film credits at the end of the movie. I'm like, oh my God, I was not expecting that. And so,
How good did that feel?
oh my, well, I got people texting me like, did I see your name in the credits? I got family texting me and stuff. I'm like, what? And so, yeah, that was special. And then about a week after that happened, I got a call from another very taxi friendly library. And she said, hey, Paul, we got to send you some paperwork. You've got a movie placement in a new movie starring Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin called Moving On. It has not yet been picked up by a studio. I don't know how the release works. It's not yet released, but it's been made, and they used the jazz quartet thing somewhere in that movie. So not one, but two movie placements last half of last year.
I think that's everybody's dream, I think, or at least most
Pretty cool.
everybody. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty wonderful to get a little instrumental piece in a reality show, but even better to get your stuff in major motion pictures with major stars. So congratulations, man.
Thank
That's
you. It prompted the creation of an IMDb page. So I now have an IMDb page, which is kind of cool.
awesome. And for those of you who have never visited IMDb, it's an incredible wealth of information that you should check out. And as you become more sophisticated, I wouldn't recommend spending the money right off the bat. But at some point, once you're doing this regularly and you know that this industry is a good fit for you and you've got some chops, some stuff that's been published by libraries and maybe some placements, sign up for IMDb Pro because that will give you even more information. But
That's what
I
I
wouldn't
did.
recommend that right off the bat.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into this post you made on the Taxi Forum in March of 2016, which was just following the end of your first, or right at the end of your first year as a Taxi member. So that was 7 years ago. just about 7 years ago. March 8th is my taxi birthday. Thought I would share my numbers like so many others do. Yeah, there are people that will go on the taxi forum and say, okay, I made X number of submissions, X number of forwards, X number of signings. Sometimes I agree with the theory behind that. Other times I don't, because, well, somebody that does an odd genre that just doesn't get asked for by the industry very often um, could have really dismal looking numbers, but it's because of the genre they work in. Whereas somebody else who does like maybe cocktail jazz piano stuff, there's always a need for that. So I think it can be misleading, but I think that
Right.
you handled this really well. So you said bullet point number one, I've submitted exactly 250 cues. Collaboration with Terrell Burt was the 250th submitted last weekend. I've heard back from 236 of those. My forward rate is a little under 27%. So 63 out of 236 submissions that he'd heard back on, he'd been forwarded for. Is your forward rate higher now that you're older, wiser, more experienced, and presumably more professional?
What did I say? The rate was 27%. I'm in probably upper 30 percentile now. It's weird how things remain consistent. Like my GPA in undergraduate versus graduate was identical.
Yeah.
My forward rate seems to say pretty much identical, 25 to 33%. One out of three, one out of four are getting forwarded, despite my increase in skills. And I've got probably some theories behind that, but it's a competitive industry, and the music's changing constantly, and you have to adapt, et cetera. So yeah, my forward rate is slightly increased, but I'm probably maxing out 35, 38% now.
Okay, which is pretty good. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think so.
if you were a baseball player, that would be considered like,
All star.
yeah,
Yeah,
there
no,
you go.
yeah, yeah. I'll take that.
And you mentioned that you made 9 submissions to get your first forward. Actually, that's not a whole lot. Some people, can submit for a whole year. They
Yeah,
might submit the same 3 things over and over and over. So they're
right.
repeating the same mistake. And then they go, I was a member for a year and didn't get any forwards. Well,
Well, it's such a complex topic though, because you nailed it on the head. It depends on the genre, what you write, how often the listings come in. People need to understand that what briefs you deliver are based on the market, and it's going to change. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of emotional piano things, but 2 years ago, there's a whole bunch of dubstep or future bass, and sometimes there's tension. So things come and go in waves. So your ability to meet market demand is going to ebb and flow based on what they're asking for. It's not Taxi's fault that there's not enough of genre ABC listings out there. It's what their customers are asking for. So your productivity is going to ebb and flow based on how many genres how quickly you can work, and what the market's asking for.
We actually try and solve that problem of the ebb and flow of different genres. We know which genres our members tend to submit the most to and get the most forwards on. They're just the most fruitful genres. And if we see a dip in a particular genre that lasts for a while, and a while might be like 2 months, we will actually reach out to companies that we know have looked for that stuff in the past and say, by the way, is it time to refresh this
Yeah,
genre or that genre? So we do try and cause the popular genres and the most productive genres for our members to come back if they've dipped. Sometimes it
right.
works, sometimes it doesn't. I remember many years ago, probably 7 years ago now, I reached out to probably 10 or 15 of our library clients and said to them, and it was true. I spent an entire weekend here at the office listening to their orchestral stuff. It sounded dated. Why did
Yeah,
it sound dated? Because samples had gotten so much better.
absolutely.
So I reached out to these libraries and said, I think it's time to refresh your orchestrals. They sound dated. And they all went, wow, thanks for letting me know. And then they ran a bunch of orchestral listings. So everybody won on that. Your next bullet, you mentioned that you attended the Taxi Road Rally convention,
Right.
parenthetically, and absolutely loved it. What was that like as a first timer, and what did you love about it?
Well, as those that know me know that I'm a social person. I'm the opposite of an introvert. I'm as extroverted as they get. I talk to strangers in elevators. I'm that kind of guy. So being in a big group was just energizing for me. I love the social aspect. Being around like-minded people, other creatives, was fantastic. It was definitely a fire hose. I came in, to Taxi with a strong musical background, but knowing nothing about TV music. And so, how do I put this? it's a slight sidebar, but to be successful in music, you've got to have the ability to put your ego aside and think you don't know it all. And if you can do that, you're going to be very successful. So I knew that my personal music success was completely irrelevant to this crowd. I was a noob, a rookie. And so getting there, just being surrounded by fantastic people, energized folks, taxi legends. You got folks like Dean Crepane, the godfather of the TVQ book world. You had folks like Russell Landwehr, the receiver of the obelisk back in the day, veterans that were there that took me in and mentored me in the forums. I can't gush enough about the value of the forums. And you don't even have to be a taxi member to participate. The forums, you create these friendships and these mentors, and then to go to see them in person at the rally, just icing. I'm getting goosebumps talking about how much energy and fun it was. My first time, I was happy to be around creatives. And there's a little background to that because the whole reason I found Taxi was kind of a recovery story. I moved this from Dallas to San Antonio in 2005 for a technology job. And the music scene in San Antonio is much smaller than it was in Dallas. And I was a regular in Dallas, all my friends. That's where I went to school, met my wife, etc. Moving to San Antonio was an adjustment in 05, but I got with a couple of bands. And then around 8-9 years later, the two bands I was with, they both broke up roughly the same time for different reasons. One, the bass player, the father of the guitar player, he died unexpectedly and the band broke up. Same month, the all Latino band I was with, I was the only non-Latino in the band. They were constantly having to recycle lead singers and they were just getting frustrated by that. So they decided we're just going to break up the cover band and go focus on our church music ministry. So that band ended. And I found myself musically homeless in around 2013 or so. And I didn't think much of it because I've been gigging for decades and I could use the break. But then I wasn't getting much work. And then I started getting kind of self-conscious about it. 2014, I lost a job that I loved. And so now I got put in this really crappy mental situation. And it was very, very frustrating. Got to support kids and my wife, and it was rough. And so I started focusing more on my piano chops because I play piano as well as saxophone and other things behind me, as you can see. But I was depressed. I was depressed and frustrated. I had no music, no creative outlet. And I was at a Barnes and Noble because I would go to Barnes and Noble because it was free and go through the magazine section. And I always play this game of who am I going to see in the magazines this month that I know? And so I'll grab Jazz Times and Downbeat. And for some reason I grabbed, I think it was Songwriter magazine and or Music Songwriter, something like that. And I'm flipping through it and I see this full page ad for something called Taxi. I'm like, that's a car. What does that have to do with music? And I started reading and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And I mean, being a technology guy, I thought taxi.com, that must have cost him some money for that 4-letter .com address, but that's a separate topic. So I read the ad and I said, okay, that sounds cool. It's a way to make money. And I needed to make money and write music, and I can write music. And so I did what most users probably do. I got on to Dr. Google and started researching to find out what's this taxi thing all about. And the internet can be the dredges of society and darkness and bitterness and anger. And I started seeing lots of negative things. You could search anything. You're going to find the naysayers everywhere. I'm like, this sounds bitter. It sounds unfounded. So let me just check. Oh, there's this forums thing. Let me go to the forums. Free ID, created Pauly at the forums and started reading and meeting people. And it was the exact opposite of the negative things I had seen.
The taxi forum.
The taxi forums, yeah. And these were wonderful people, and they're posting links to their music and asking feedback. And the feedback I was seeing was legitimately educationally based. It was based on context, on experience, from musicians and from engineers, et cetera. I'm like, this is a fantastic education.
Versus some of the posts you would see on other music forums, like, dude, you call that a song? That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, it's like you never read the comments on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram because it's always going to turn dark. But so I was at the forums was so fantastic, and I started private messaging folks, and I'm like, these folks are really nice. I'm going to sign up. So I signed up for Taxi based on the ecosystem that you created in the forums. And then once I joined and saw the listings, and it's just been fantastic ever since. So it was a recovery story in that I found a musical outlet that I could focus my natural creative instincts on at a time when I didn't have one. So it was very, really important for me. And it pulled me out of that funk. And for better or worse, here I am today and I'm doing well, I guess.
Well, I'm glad it did. I'm glad you did all that. And I'm glad it pulled you out of the funk. And I got to tell you, it's something I didn't anticipate when I started the company. I never could have envisioned the personal relationships and the social aspect of taxi. I mean, we live in a world where social contact is so much so internet centric, so mobile phone, I mean, people live
Yeah. Ah, there it is.
people live on these things, but there's a real community and real friends.
Yeah.
People say that all the time. They come to the road rally, they make friends for life,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you were smart to do it early on. Um, Let's see. You said you signed with two. This was back in 2016, your first year. You signed with two production music libraries
Hmm.
based on forwards from Taxi. You signed with another due to a face-to-face meeting at the road rally. You met
Hmm.
the owner of the library there. We hear these stories all the time.
Right.
And honestly, sometimes a little, I love my company. I'm very
Of course.
protective of its reputation. And it bothers me when people say, I didn't get forwarded or I got forwarded and it went into the black hole. I didn't hear anything. Well, there's so many other ways to get forwarded and build relationships through Taxi. It is an ecosystem, as you said. And I think more people should take advantage of that. But now you're in 30 libraries. You've got 1,000 tracks and 30 libraries. Is there a magical thing or a certain move or a switch you flicked that caused you to go from being in three to 30, tenfold increase in
Yeah.
those numbers
So
over 7 years?
it comes back to the taxi forums actually. Um, Through the forums in my second year or so, I met a guitar collaborator. I've got a few guitars back here. I'm a very, very average guitar player. And so I was working on some stuff. I want to say it was some Latin influenced stuff. And I met a gentleman in the forums named Larry. And we started uh, chatting and messaging. And he said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And we started collaborating together. I said, I need this. I'll send you the tracks. And God bless technology today. You can have different DAWs. It doesn't matter. Email, WeTransfer.com, Dropbox, etc. It makes it so incredibly easy. And so we probably did 30 tunes together over a course of a couple months.
Wow.
And yeah, we cranked it out. The workflow was fantastic. You could do a whole show on collaborations, Michael, because collaborations are like dating. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And Larry and I just synced, and the working styles are how quickly we did things, our ears, the way we gave each other feedback. It was fantastic. We're about 50 collaborations in, and we started, becoming friends. It turns out he lives 8 miles down the road from me here in San Antonio.
How long did
And
it take you to realize that?
I'm probably 6 months into this whole thing,
It's
and
hysterical.
we've done over 100 collabs now, and we stopped collaborating a couple of years ago because it's kind
Why?
of we just went each our own direction. He stopped focusing on TV sync music and wanted to focus more on producing other people's music for them. So
Okay.
he wanted to direct instead of act, as they say. And so he's making more money in project jobs here locally than what you get for sync. So we're still friends, and we still have never met face to face, even though he lives 8 miles away. I think
There's
he's somewhat of an introvert, and I'm an extrovert, and I totally get that. I'm not going to pressure anyone to meet me. So, for all the introverts watching this, introverts unite together, but in different rooms at different times. And we know that the rally can be incredibly exhausting. Both my kids are introverts. Both my kids are left-handed. My wife and I are extroverts and right-handed. Genetics. God's got a sense of humor. But so I understand how exhausting it is for introverts to have to go to a meeting, never mind 1,000-person energetic thing. Come to the bar, have a drink, let's talk. But the introverts they'll find their pockets of places together and commiserate together, so you can still do it. But
I hear that all the time.
yeah,
It's the most commonly asked question I personally get leading up to the road rally.
huh?
Will I feel uncomfortable because I'm an introvert? At first, I
No,
tell them the Michael you see on camera is the Michael. I'm doing my job and I tend to do well in front of a webcam. Put me in a social setting, a party of 50 people. I always say this, I'll be the guy standing in the corner talking to my wife. And if she walks away to get more food, I'm like, please, nobody come and talk to me because unless you're going to talk music business, I got nothing. So
yeah,
I understand that people who are introverts might be afraid of the sheer size of the road rally and think, how will I fit in? Every one of them who I twist the arm of and they make the move, come to the rally, Virtually every one of them will thank me in the end. I'm an
Yeah.
introvert, but is what I hear, and they love it
Yeah.
and they make friends.
And so you asked, how did I go from 3 to 30 libraries?
Yeah.
A lot of those libraries were through that relationship with Larry. Larry was a hustler and he would cold call libraries directly, and he had some experience already. So, one of the biggest ways I think to get into libraries other than Taxi is working with collaborators that are already in those libraries because
Yeah.
they've done the paperwork and they're vetted. And so, if they come to me saying, "Hey, Paul, I need some," I just did a recording several tracks for Dean last week for saxophone. He hit me up, had a quick deadline. He knows I'm fast, and so now I'm assuming that Dean's tracks will be accepted, and I will be in a new library thanks to Dean reaching out to me for those saxophone tracks. So a lot of those libraries I got into were through my collaborators cold calling, and then a good chunk of them I actually cold called. Well, I don't. Cold calling's got such a negative term. I've got decades of sales experience in the technology space, and it's kind of a hustler Vegas term. I prefer warm calling, whereas you are preparing, you're researching, so when you reach out, you are not sticking your foot in the mouth the first time, which kind of gets back to a point you mentioned earlier, Michael, is yeah, sure, you can go call these libraries on your own, but you better know what the hell you're doing because you get one, what's the commercial? You only get one chance to make a first impression. And
Yeah.
if you don't have your ducks in a row, you're going to burn that bridge. And you've said before on Taxi TV that library owners and music supervisors, they talk. They're at an event and they're having a drink before, and oh, this happened to me, and that, oh, I knew that guy, what a jerk, or man, that guy's a rock star to work with, or that girl, she's fantastic. So your reputation does get spread. So yes, can you do it on your own? You can't. Be prepared, have your stuff ready. I've done a couple of videos on that as well. But Taxi just makes it so much easier because they're kind of greasing the skids. They're introducing you to libraries, and they know that when they reach out to you, that you've been vetted and you have a product. So yeah, that's a switch from 3 libraries to 30 libraries was a variety of sources. Now, I don't recommend everyone get tons of libraries. I've been accepted by 30 libraries. I would say a handful of those are useless. They'll take anything and have done nothing for me. Just because you get in a library doesn't mean anything, because if they accept everything,
Let's
you know,
can we
sure,
pause on that point and talk about
sure,
that for a moment? Because,
absolutely.
people will say, yeah, I was a taxi member for a year and I didn't get any deals, but on my own, I got into 3, 4 libraries, whatever. And if I make the effort to call them or email them and find out what the libraries are, they're libraries that will take virtually anything.
Yeah,
Hardly anybody ever makes any money from them. There are libraries and there are libraries, and it takes people a moment, maybe
yeah,
a little lack of ego, if you will. Look, it's great. They want to go. I've got a publisher. I'm in a production music library. Yes, you are, but there are trailer parks and there are mansions.
yeah, yeah.
And Taxi, frankly, focuses on the upper crust end of the spectrum. We could be running listings all day long for the trailer park libraries, but we don't, because our members can do that on their own. And the ones who do often find out that they're just not productive for advancing one's career. So I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up. Um,
You want to
it,
make
it, go
you want to
ahead.
make sure that you're in a library that's getting you placements. Just because they took your stuff doesn't mean they're going to place your stuff. Is your track one of 300,000 tracks that if a client visits that library, how are they going to find you? It's like trying to get a hit by uploading to Spotify. Spotify gets something like 80,000 new songs a day. How can you shine and stand out? The same thing applies to music libraries. If they've got a million tracks, you're never going to be found. You want to find the right libraries and that they're going to be actively pitching you and they've got recent placements, et cetera. So just being in a library is no big deal. I like to say the 30 library thing because it helps kind of establish some street credit in the
Yeah.
industry. But then, like you just did, let's pull the context. What libraries? So of the 30 I'm in, I'm probably focusing on 4 or 5 regularly. And of those 4 or 5, 3 or 4, the owners are friends of mine that I've met at Taxi. We have drinks together. We email each other personally about college football or politics or whatever. We get along. So it's about relationships. So you want to find the right libraries and foster those personal relationships, and then you'll be successful.
And you don't want to, you want to be, let me change that from a negative to a positive. You want to be in libraries that have clients that need the kind of music you're doing.
Right. Right.
Because, I got accepted into a great library. It might be a great library for you because you do a particular genre and they currently have 3 shows that are using that genre. I, on the other hand, could have my stuff in that library. I could have like big orchestral trailery stuff, and they thought it was awesome and they signed it. But if they don't have clients that make trailers and use big, bombastic,
Right.
like that stuff, if they don't use it or have clients that use it, your stuff you got signed by a prestigious library could lay there like a lox
Yep.
until they get a client that does that. And sometimes a library, you'll have a great run with a library for a year or two or three, and then they lose a client, or the music supervisor who had a relationship with the library owner got bounced out or moved to another show, and
Right.
yeah, all those
Or
variables
the
go.
show gets canceled. I mean,
Yeah.
soap operas get canceled. There's a few that are left, but they get canceled. Reality TV, the Kardashians, a lot of folks are jumping on that Kardashian money. I've got several placements with them, but that show, stopped after season 20. Thank God for syndication. But yeah, things change. So it's good to have, a rotation of libraries. And that's one of the reasons I came back to Taxi. I think you mentioned earlier, I was with Taxi, left and came back. One of the reasons I came back was to refresh my library relationships, always have a plan B, always have more folks. I also came back to get back with my community and my peers and pay it forward. But the main business reason, you got to treat this like a business, was I wanted to refresh my library connections.
Yeah. We've got guys who are taxi legends. They're members that are making six-figure incomes. And I've asked them, why are you still a member? And they say, for the community. And
Yeah.
every now and then, I'd like to add two or three new libraries a year that I work with because some of the older ones drop off or go fallow. I get it, but that's a smart business move. If people
Well,
don't think with a business head, they think with a creative soul, and that's only half the equation.
there's also the educational aspect. When I joined Taxi originally, I had never heard of dramedy or hick hop or these other genres I had never ever heard of. And I'm a pretty sophisticated musician. And so I'm like, the listings alone they pique my curiosity. And holy cow, that's a really cool style. And I'm going to pursue that and add that quiver to my bow, add that weapon to my arsenal, my tool belt. And so just getting the listings exposed you to newer styles and things that have been existing for a long time you didn't know about, or new things like funk music. PHONK right now is really, really popular. It's a kind of trap based on drifting cars, etc. My daughter actually hit me to that recently, but I might see some of that. Those listings show up soon. New trends in music get found by reality TV shows, etc., athletic shows, and then they're going to start asking Taxi, "Hey, can we get some music like this?" So it keeps you abreast, keeps you fresh stylistically for folks that want to change. Now, if you're a dying in the wool rock and roll guitar player and that's what you do, you can make a lot of money because there's a ton of that music everywhere. But if you want to explore new genres, Taxi's great for that because the listings let you choose like a Cheesecake Factory member. You menu, you can choose whatever you want, So yeah, it's really neat.
I saw a video that somebody hipped me to, I don't know, 4 or 5 days ago. And the guy in the video said that he left Taxi. Part of it was the guilt he felt by the sheer volume of listings that we offered and sent out in the emails every day. And he felt guilty that he wasn't responding to them. And it's like,
What?
but hold on, didn't you want to be in the business and succeed in the business and have this be your job, your main source of income? Much better than digging ditches or
Yeah,
working, in a job you don't love.
yeah.
That's what you joined for, but yet you feel guilty that there are
I
too
want you
many
to give me
opportunities.
listings, but not too many. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I don't
That's
get it.
just someone who's just not the right mindset. That's all.
Yeah, and then he was polite about Taxi. He didn't trash the company, but the overall video had a bit of a tone of it's not for me. Like it
Yeah,
might not be for you. Well,
yeah.
maybe it wasn't for you because you had the wrong mindset or the
You're
wrong work
not for
ethic.
Taxi. You're not the right client for Taxi. You can't. I'm not going to do this too deeply, but the world today, the expectation that we all grew up in padded playgrounds with helicopter parents, and everyone gets a trophy for showing up. That's not how the music industry is. If your music stinks, they're not going to call you back. And if the music stinks, they might not even tell you. At Taxi, the screeners are going to tell you what they liked and didn't like. In the forums, they're going to tell you what they like and didn't like. You've got to be able to accept that feedback. If you can't take that, if you don't like conflict, then this is not the industry for you. Now, Michael, you've said over the years through Taxi TV, there's different people want different things out of writing music. Some folks just want that one-time buzz of hearing their music on a TV show because it's a fantastic feeling, and that's it, and they're happy. Other folks are at the other end of the spectrum. They're trying to generate livable income. That's maybe a six-figure income. Difficult to do, but possible, as exemplified through several of your members. I'm trying to supplement my income to a nice little, side gig to replace my wife's former teacher salary. She stopped teaching when we had kids years ago. So different goals, different expectations, but you've got to treat this with the proper seriousness based on those goals. If it's just fun and you want that one hit, great. If you want to make money, this is a business. You got to focus, got to be professional, know what you're doing, accept feedback properly. When I went to school for music, I went to one of the best music schools in the world, North Texas State University, now the University of North Texas. I was there in the 80s. I was one of 230 saxophone majors. And everyone that gets there was their all-state, all-New England, all-region stud in high school. And so, when my teacher found out I wanted to go to music school, he said, okay, Paul, you're a saxophone player at 3 schools: Eastman, upstate New York; Miami, Florida; North Texas; and Denton, Texas. Those are the 3 best schools for saxophone players at the time in the 80s. And going to North Texas was like going to Duke for basketball in the 80s. Okay. Yeah. So I applied to all
Great
3
analogy.
schools. Yeah, that's because things change. I applied to all 3, got into all 3. Eastman at the time was 12 grand a year. Miami was 13 grand a year. North Texas was 4 grand a year. So my dad says, son, you're going to Texas.
Yeah.
So I got there. That's a whole separate conversation. A Connecticut boy moved to Texas in the summer, culture shock. But when I got there, this is the point I'm trying to get to, is I was the big guy up in New England, saxophone player, but everybody else there was their guy from California or Texas or Florida or Ohio, whatever. It was the all-star team. And I went there thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to make a lab band, jazz band, no problem. I'm really good at what I do. And we all auditioned. I didn't make a band my first semester. I was shell-shocked. There's 9 bands. I didn't make a band. I made what's called a reading band, that you need to work on your reading. And trust me, my reading was really good. So I was with some seriously good musicians. Now, at that point, and you walked up to the bulletin board and you're looking for your name, you don't see it. And then reading band, oh my God. And it wasn't on alto, my instrument. It was on bari sax, because the professor thought, he's a big guy, he can hold a bari, let's put him on bari sax.
I've got a very deep affection for baritone saxes. It's always a big thrill for me whenever I got to record one. Just beautiful instrument.
I've got one right next to me. So at that point, you're in your first official week of classes. There's a life-making decision that happens at that point. Oh my God, I didn't make a band. Curl up in a fetal position, change majors, or go home. Or just say, damn, I got work to do. And I chose the latter. And before you know
Pretty mature attitude for a college kid. Good going on that.
Yeah, thank you. And I had friends that did the exact opposite, and they changed majors and left. One of my friends who stuck it out for a while his name is Jeff. He's one of the top storyboard artists in Hollywood, one of the top 3 storyboard artists in all of Hollywood. He's worked for all the bigs, and he's a fantastic saxophone player now. But back then, he couldn't do it. And so you have to do that. So why am I saying this long story? Because if you want to be successful in the TV music business, you've got to recognize you're going to fail. People are going to say no. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to produce crappy music and that you think is great. You're going to think, my mother told me this is great. My boyfriend, girlfriend told me this is great. They're going to love it. And then it gets rejected. You can change careers and say the Taxi is lame because you didn't get forwarded. Or you can say, man, I got a lot to do to get better, and recognize Taxi can help you get exponentially better. My entire TV music career is successful because of what Taxi has given me today. Flat out, full stop, no holds barred. I would not be successful in TV if not for the friends, the tools, the people, and you, Michael, for what you've done, Taxi.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I'm sure the others, if they watch the video,
little tear in my eye. I'm an emotional guy. Yeah.
No, but, it gives us motivation to work as hard as we do around here to always deliver excellence.